When you look back to different times where people have said progressives should leverage their votes because it is going to do something in terms of the public opinion about something, understand that you cannot make these calculations in a vacuum. We have a corporate media that is also, to the extent that there's any ideology, and I don't care, I mean, if you're talking about Fox, you're talking about CNN, or talking about MSNBC. Mm-hmm. I can tell you at the very least, the administration of whatever, the corporate leadership of MSNBC, whether it's, whether you're talking about its ownership in terms of the Comcast or GE, and I don't know how much GE owns of it anymore. It used to own 51% back in the day. It's definitely a minority share if it has any, which is largest maker of weapons in the country, maybe the world. Mm-hmm. They're not going to side with a narrative that in any way is beneficial to progressives, never mind leftists. And so you need to work that into your calculation when you're talking about some type of like legislative leveraging by, progressives in the House. That's, or the Senate for that matter. That's just a reality, right? Like you could say like, oh, they're going to walk out with an umbrella. But if there's a hurricane out there, it ain't going to make a difference. And this is a prime example of that. You have progressives who are putting a line in the sand, and we're talking about maybe it's 25% of the entire Democratic caucus. Maybe it's closer to like 60 to, maybe it's closer to like 45% of the Democratic caucus who are saying we are putting a line in the sand exactly where the White House told us to draw it. We are the normal. We are the norm. We are the watershed in which any divergence from should be seen as the divergence.
Yes.
Should be seen as the other, should be seen as the obstruction. However, CNN is rewriting that framework. I give you, should we start with, which one should we start with?
Chris Cuomo?
Chris Cuomo. Well, let's start with the Chiron from CNN's The Situation Room.
Yes.
Okay. They bring on Justice Dems spokesperson Waleed Shahid.
Or no,
I said sorry. He
took.
Oh no, he took the screenshot. They've brought on like this crew of talking heads from Casey Hunt.
Jesus. Yeah.
And here it is. Breaking news. Progressive Dems dig in, threaten to tank Biden agenda. That is not what's happening.
Nope.
The Biden agenda is the $3.5 trillion bill. The so-called bipartisan thing was a sop to the corporatists to get them to sign on to the Biden agenda. The Biden agenda is the $3.5 trillion bill.
It's both, and progressives say they are going to vote for both. The only people saying they aren't going to vote for both are the moderates. Then that's the group that you direct your ire at. They are the ones tanking the Biden agenda. We saw Pramila Jayapal have to slowly walk Breonna Kyler through this. Earlier in the show, we played that clip. Then we saw her have to slowly walk Jake Tapper of CNN, who was not apparently aware of how many members there were in the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Or even what it
walk
is,
through.
For that matter.
And here is Chris Cuomo just sort of like talking about, I can't believe these progressives are going to tank this thing.
Do you realize how precarious a position the president is in, and not with the big lie, not with people who wanted to steal the election, not with people trying to convince people that it's freedom to not take the vaccine, his own party. Tonight's vote on moving the debt ceiling, that's just a stray shot. The real risk is that the Democrats may hand power back to the Trumpers. How? These internal divisions are real and really threatening Biden's agenda. It may not get done. Pelosi pushing the 27th as a drop dead date for a spending bill that has no agreement only makes things worse.
Pause it for 1 second.
The House is voting on legislation.
Let's just be clear what he's talking about there. This was a demand by 9 members of Congress that the vote take place on the 27th. Pelosi didn't want to do it. She did it. I'm not saying she has no agency here, but let's be clear on what the dynamic is. It is not like sort of Pelosi sort of randomly doing this. It's because there are 9 obstructionist Democrats, corporatists, who are holding up the entire process. And also notice he doesn't define what Biden's agenda is, because if he did, he'd have to admit what the reality is that those are the people who are threatening not to vote for the vast majority of the agenda. 3.5 is bigger than 1.2. Can we all agree on that? Continue.
Spending bill that has no agreement only makes things worse. The House is voting on legislation that could help avert a government shutdown, right? The division, though, within the party is the problem, and it's real. The center left, the moderate Democrats, are increasingly at odds with what the progressives want. What is
that? The center left. First off, I mean, I don't want to get caught up in like these like center left. Like, these are not moderate Democrats. How do you have moderate Democrats? They are at the furthest edges of conservatism in the party. They are at the furthest edges of republicanism within the party. They are at the furthest edges of corporatism in the party. The moderate is Joe Biden. Joe Biden's whole political career has been, I'm placing myself in the center of the party. That's what the $3.5 trillion is. It is at the center of the party.
As
Bernie Sanders wanted $6 trillion.
As is Schumer, as is Pelosi, as representatives of the party, and Biden as a representative of the party. That's how it's worked throughout history, as you pointed out before, that most of the time, except now in this instance, because they have to find a way to change the conversation and blame progressives, the president's agenda is the party's agenda. And that's what the progressives want. And they are not framing it.
That's what they have compromised to.
Right. And that's not what they are framing it as for the first time in a really long time. First time since I can remember. And why is that? It's because the progressives are on board with it.
David Roberts tweeted out this political article. Sinema tells White House she's opposed to current prescription drug plan. And Roberts writes, 90% of the public wants the government to be able to negotiate drug prices. Sinema, one of Congress's biggest recipients of pharma money, doesn't. There's a whole article about it, and she never once says or is asked why. She's just moderate.
Exactly. And I mean, they're trying to obscure what's going on here. But I continue with the video.
The division, though, within the party is the problem, and it's real. The center left, the moderate Democrats, are increasingly at odds with what the progressives want, which is what President Biden, that's his starting point. So he's with the farther left on his spending bill. It's very aggressive. The center left, where he used
Pause it. No. No. Joe Biden's not with the farthest left. Yeah. The left already compromised. $6 trillion was what Bernie Sanders wanted. $6 trillion was what Bernie Sanders wanted. Joe Biden didn't come to $6 trillion. The left okayed a middle point. This has already happened. And you'll recall, like, there was a lot of time that the left spent on trying to cement that narrative. But Chris Cuomo ignoring it. Continue.
Want, which is what President Biden, that's his starting point. So he's with the farther left on his spending bill. It's very aggressive. The center left, where he used to be, and the moderates, they really don't want it. And they're starting to almost sound like they're from different parties. Here's the problem. If the Senate The Democrats there, if they won't give on the reconciliation price tag in a way that appeases the far left slash the president, and the response from them, from the fringe, is to stall the infrastructure bill that's been agreed on in the Senate, President Joseph Biden could literally go 0 for 2. You stave off the big lie. You stave off an insurrection. You beat the most poisonous president in a generation, only to have your own party leave you vulnerable? Are you serious?
Are you serious? The fringe is doing this. So just to be clear, by any definition of the fringe, you've got upwards around minimum 50 people who are not on board with this. They're the fringe, as opposed to the 9 who are sinking the president's agenda.
And it's not just 50 people. Again. It's Biden. It's Pelosi. It's Schumer. It's party leadership. But that's inconvenient. He also doesn't define fringe. He doesn't say really necessarily what he's talking about. He just talks about party divisions. And he hopes that the rest of CNN's programming potentially can do the work for them because they all got the memo. I guess. Right. That's the point. People, when he says fringe, they know what they're talking about.
When he says we staved off the big lie, I mean, that's news to me because as far as I know, I've heard we're going to try to out-organize voter suppression. And the reason we're not passing any legislation to expand and protect voting rights is because these exact same quote-unquote moderates standing in the way of that, too.
Yeah, yep. We staved off the big lie. Like, this kind of stuff is percolating, and Republicans have made gains across all these state houses. This is going to be going on for decades to come. It
is stunning when you think about what I mean, by any definition, how would you define the Biden agenda? Not full of
President
things that
Joseph Biden's agenda.
President Joseph Biden's agenda. It was voting protection. It was reinstating a big part of the Voting Rights Act. It was reinstating a $15 minimum wage. Or I should say, raising it to a $15 minimum wage. Prescription drugs. It was immigration reform. There is a specific person and cohort of the Senate that is stopping that and has stopped all of that stuff. And yet, we've never heard it framed in that way. Never heard it framed as Joe Manchin, the obstructionist. It's like, how do we convince Joe Manchin or, persuade him?
Yeah.
It really is stunning. And, I would encourage people, when we cut this video, and tell Dorsey to put this one early, keep tweeting it at Cuomo. Just, get them defensive about this because they should be. Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.